How's everybody doing? Video 2. If you did not see video 1, we did a lot of talking on hills. The hills on the Ironman course for the bike and the run, how to train properly for the hills. If you live in a hilly area, and also if you live in a flat area, we talked a lot about that. We talked a lot about shifting through hills, about how overriding the hills can really affect the race in a negative standpoint. But a lot of the topics also that were asked when we submitted the questions. So if you have any questions and you want to submit them, put them in the comment section or just email me directly. And a lot of questions were talked about mental training, like mental preparation, mental like visualization kind of work. And then I moved that also like into course recon. So we're going to talk today about mental training in course recon, and then putting that into one place. So I think the first thing with like the mental training for the race is identifying, number one, what are you most fearful of? Okay. So just sitting here, ask yourself, what am I most fearful of for Ironman Wisconsin or 70.3? I'll give you a second. You got it? Okay. So you think about that, and let's say it's the swim. Let's say it's the swim start. So you think about the mental training, the visualization process for what the swim start's going to look like. And then instead of focusing so much on the negative aspect of the swim start, think about what are the things that you can do in that moment that's either going to help you relax, where you're going to start, which way you're going to flow through the swim start, and focusing on that. Because a lot of times you hear people constantly to say, I'm fearful of this, I'm fearful of that, I'm fearful of this. And it just raises that anxiety level really high. But if you can sit there and say, I'm going to do this to conquer that, it's going to help you. So a lot of times like what we'll see like with the swim start is that people will just start really hard, like harder than normal. So if their cruisable speed is say 2-minute pace per 100 yards, for whatever reason they start and they're going 140 pace. Maybe they're fearful and they want to get out of the mix or whatever, or they actually start kicking a lot more than they ever have in their entire life. And they get like some hamstring calf cramping because they're just kicking so much. And they do these things that are out of the norm. So I think a lot of it's preparing yourself for like the cues potentially that you want to talk about, say in your head for the start, and focus on that. So maybe slowing your arm cadence down, relaxing, focusing on the exhale process so you can just like stay relaxed, because we know that one of the last things you want to do in open water is hold your breath. Like you never want to hold your breath. So first, just identify that. If it's the bike, if it's the hills, think about what are you going to be doing on the hills? How are you going to attack the hills? How are you going to pace the hills? Is it the descent on Garfoot? Is it the descent on Shady Oak? Like, what are those things that are making you nervous? And you visually set the plan for what does the downhill on Garfoot look like? What is the speed in that hard left, or even off of Timber, like any of those hills, right? And it's just setting up that plan. So don't chatter negativity, chatter your plan, your execution plan as you move through that. And then the run, what is your plan for the run? Are you going to try to run the whole thing? Or are you just going to be very smart and use a walk-run strategy, aid station to aid station, walking observatory, stuff like that. So I think the first thing is identifying what is your limiter, like what are you fearful of, and then working through that. So going into a little bit of course recon, and like also stick on the mental preparation, is be real with yourself. You're doing an Ironman, you're doing a 70.3. Like these are ultra endurance events. And for most people, you're going to be out there for over 5 hours for the 70.3. For the bike, for the Ironman, obviously 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 hours. Okay. A lot of this is not going to feel easy. Hate to say it. Hate to be that person. This is not going to be easy. So a lot of times if you're on the swim and you're in that final 1,000, the final 500, and your shoulders start to hurt, instead of saying, well, this sucks, you could just say, I've expected this. I'm swimming 4,000 plus yards. It's going to be hard. So that mindset shift's important. But if you associate fatigue and discomfort with negativity and failure, then I think your mindset and your expectations wrong. And then when you're looking also at like the bike, when you get through hills, like what do hills feel like? If you expect hills to feel easy, well, they never really feel easy because the hills on the Ironman course, so the 70.3 course, which don't have a lot, but the Ironman course, like they're just hard. So don't expect them to feel easy. When you get to the second loop and you're climbing up to Mount Horeb, or you're climbing through after Mount Horeb, on Whitty, like that little Garfoot section, like those are just like hard hills. So the same thing is like, I think your expectation is very important, that at some point, like you're really just going to have some low moments. And if you think you're not, or if you think you're going to get through the whole 112 and feel amazing, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. Well, you're going to have moments of feeling great, and you're going to have moments of feeling rough. Like that's the reality of what you're going to experience out there. I don't think I've ever met a single athlete that got to the end of the 112-mile bike and thought, that was the easiest bike I've ever done. That was great. A lot of times, like once you get to the stick, and there are some good hills on the stick, that you're thinking, I'm pretty much ready to be done with this bike. And I'm not trying to be like negative. I think that's like the reality of what you're going to experience. And I'm not here to say this is going to be great, this is going to be amazing. While it is going to be that, I think you need to have the mental preparation and just like that foresight of like what this course is going to feel like, because it's going to be an amazing day, and the course support is going to be amazing out there. But I think it's important that you're not associating fatigue and just being tired with not having trained enough, or the training wasn't great, or you're doing poorly. Fatigue is natural for this event. You are doing an Ironman, and it's going to be really, really challenging. And I think your mindset needs to be in that so that you're ready for that, which is really key. Yeah. So mental training, course recon, being realistic, going into the mental training. Yeah, I think as like with a lot of the athletes that we coach, we talk a lot about visualization and running through the race. A lot of times you should visualize the race so much to where you have some deja vu moments where you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've thought about this. I've thought about this scenario. You get on Messerschmitt and you're flying down, you're going up those steep hills, or you're thinking about breaking the course up in segments. And our coach Jess, she wrote a big article on breaking the course up, and we're going to release that next week. But when you think about how to work through this and how to visualize this race, when you're on the swim start, you're just thinking about the swim. You're literally just thinking about the first buoy, the first lap. Okay? Like that's what you're kind of working yourself through. On the bike, you're not thinking about the hills. Like you're just thinking about, how do I navigate the stick? What does the stick look like? How do I shift through the stick? That kind of stuff. Then when you get to Verona on the first lap, you're thinking about, how do I tackle Valley? How do I go through Highway G, 92, the climb up to Mount Horeb? You're breaking the race very much into segments of 3 to 5 to 10 mile segments, and you're working through that segment. Because then all of a sudden, oh, you're in Mount Horeb. Oh, you're in Meso. Okay, you're back to Verona. And I think if you're working through the process in very, very small chunks, that helps you tremendously feel like you're conquering the next thing. Because I find that when people go through the first loop, they go through special needs, which is like right by Rocket and like the Verona area. A lot of times when they get that, they get to the second loop, and a lot of times that's where the lull happens. because they're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm only halfway on this bike. So then at that point, you want to think, what is the next step? Get me through Valley, and you just go back to my next goal is to get to Mount Horeb. How do I get to Mount Horeb very successfully? How do I get through those 3 hills on the final segment? It's going to be challenging. So I think what I'm getting at is break the race up into very small chunks. So hope that's helpful. We're going to make this a little shorter than last time. If you have any questions, if you want me to answer more questions, please let me know. And we'll see you next week.